Wrong bank, wrong day, gentlemen. Black single dad shield CEO from Robbery. His true skills shocked everyone. Some days Marcus Williams woke up thinking he knew exactly how his life would unfold. Tuesday, March 15th, was supposed to be one of those predictable days. He had exactly 47 minutes before he needed to pick up his daughter Zoe from school, and all he wanted to do was deposit her birthday money from her grandmother. A simple 5-minute errand that would leave him plenty of time to grab groceries and maybe even squeeze in a quick coffee. If someone had told Marcus that morning that he'd end up tackling armed robbers in the middle of First National Bank, he would have laughed and suggested they watch fewer action movies. The bank felt unusually quiet when Marcus walked in at 2:23 p.m. Only 3 other customers stood in line ahead of him, and the familiar hum of fluorescent lights mixed with the soft murmur of teller conversations. Mrs. Chin behind the counter waved at him. She'd been handling his deposits for the past 2 years, ever since Sarah passed away, and he had to figure out how to manage everything alone. Marcus pulled out his phone to check the time again. Zoe's school dismissed at 3:15, and she hated waiting in the aftercare program. "Daddy, the other kids get picked up right away," she told him just last week, her 7-year-old voice carrying that particular mixture of sadness and accusation that could slice through his heart faster than any blade. The woman in front of him shifted her weight, and Marcus noticed she was clutching a leather briefcase like her life depended on it. Professional attire, confident posture, but something about the way she kept glancing toward the door made his old instincts kick in. During his 8 years in Special Forces, Marcus had learned to call it situational awareness, that sixth sense that tells you when something doesn't feel right. She was tall, maybe 5'8", with dark hair pulled back in a sleek bun and wearing a charcoal gray business suit that probably cost more than Marcus's monthly rent. Her manicured fingers drummed silently against the briefcase handle, and every few seconds, her eyes would dart to the large windows facing the street. Marcus found himself studying the reflection in the glass doors. 2 men in hoodies had been lingering outside for the past few minutes, pretending to look at their phones but never actually walking away. In his former life, before Sarah's cancer diagnosis forced him to choose between his military career and being the father Zoe needed, Marcus would have immediately reported suspicious behavior like this to his commanding officer. Now, he was just a single dad trying to make ends meet, applying for security jobs and hoping someone would overlook the 2-year gap in his resume. "Next!" Mrs. Chin called out, and the businesswoman moved forward to the counter. Marcus watched as she opened her briefcase just slightly, revealing what looked like important documents sealed in manila envelopes. The way she handled them, with the same careful precision he'd once used with classified intelligence reports, told him these weren't ordinary papers. That's when the first gunshot shattered the afternoon quiet. The front door exploded inward as 3 masked figures stormed into the bank, assault rifles raised and voices already screaming commands that Marcus's trained mind instantly catalogued: military-style coordination, professional equipment, specific targets rather than random chaos. "Everyone on the ground! Now!" The businesswoman beside him froze for a split second too long. Marcus saw the lead gunman's weapon swinging in her direction and reacted before his conscious mind could interfere. Training kicked in like muscle memory. Marcus grabbed the woman around the waist and pulled her down behind the marble counter as bullets sprayed across the space where she'd been standing. Her briefcase flew from her hands, documents scattering across the polished floor like fallen leaves. "Stay down," Marcus whispered against her ear, his voice calm despite the chaos erupting around them. "Don't move until I say so." He could feel her trembling against him, but she nodded and pressed herself closer to the marble barrier. Smart. She understood that survival sometimes meant trusting a complete stranger. The gunmen were shouting at the tellers, demanding they open the vault, but Marcus noticed something odd. The lead gunman kept looking around, as if searching for something specific. Or someone specific. Mrs. Chin was crying behind her window, hands shaking as she fumbled with the cash drawer. But Marcus could see what the robbers apparently couldn't: the silent alarm button had already been pressed. Police response time in this neighborhood averaged 4 minutes and 30 seconds. He'd researched it when he was job hunting, knowing security companies always asked about local emergency response capabilities. "Where are the documents?" the lead gunman suddenly shouted, his voice cutting through the other noise. "Rivera? We know you're in here." Marcus felt the woman beside him stiffen. Rivera. The name meant something to her. The gunman closest to their position was young, maybe 22, and his hands were shaking slightly as he held his weapon. Amateur. Probably his first real job. Marcus had seen hundreds of soldiers with that same nervous energy. Dangerous because they were unpredictable, but also vulnerable because they weren't thinking clearly. Marcus made his decision. He whispered to the woman, "When I move, stay exactly where you are. Don't try to run, don't try to help. Just stay hidden." Before she could respond, Marcus exploded from behind the counter. 8 years of Special Forces training compressed into 3 seconds of fluid motion. He came up low and fast, catching the young gunman completely off guard. A sharp strike to the wrist sent the assault rifle clattering across the floor. A follow-up elbow to the solar plexus doubled the kid over, and Marcus finished with a choke hold that had the gunman unconscious in seconds. The other 2 robbers spun toward him, weapons raised. "Wrong bank, wrong day, gentlemen!" Marcus shouted as he used the unconscious gunman's body as a shield and dove for cover behind a support pillar. The lead gunman's voice cracked with fury. "You picked the wrong fight, hero! This ain't your business! Federal agent!" Marcus shouted back, the lie coming naturally. Sometimes deception was the best weapon. "Building is surrounded!" "Like hell you are!" the second robber yelled, spraying bullets toward Marcus's position. "Just some wannabe tough guy." But Marcus could hear the beautiful sound of police sirens in the distance, and apparently so could the lead gunman. "Move! Move!" the leader screamed to his remaining partner. "This wasn't supposed to happen. Some single dad just ruined everything." They ran for the door, abandoning their unconscious accomplice and any hope of completing their mission. Marcus stayed in position until he was sure they were gone, then immediately went to check on the other customers and bank employees. Everyone was shaken but alive. Mrs. Chen was still crying, but she managed to give him a wobbly smile and mouth, "Thank you," from behind her protective glass. Marcus finally turned his attention back to the businesswoman, who was now standing behind the counter, staring at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Shock, certainly, but also something that looked like recognition. "Are you hurt?" Marcus asked, his voice gentle now that the immediate danger had passed. She shook her head slowly, never breaking eye contact. "You saved my life. Just happened to be in the right place at the right time," Marcus replied, already thinking about how he was going to explain being late to pick up Zoe. His daughter worried when his schedule changed unexpectedly, another casualty of losing her mother too young. The woman bent down to gather her scattered documents, and Marcus noticed her hands were steady now. Whatever had shaken her during the attack was already being pushed aside by what looked like a sharp, analytical mind reasserting control. "I don't think this was random," she said quietly, glancing around to make sure the other customers couldn't hear. "They knew my name. They were looking for something specific." Marcus nodded. He'd reached the same conclusion, but hearing her say it out loud made the situation feel infinitely more complicated. Random bank robberies were one thing. Targeted attacks meant ongoing danger. "You should probably talk to the police about that," Marcus said. "Tell them exactly what you just told me." She looked at him again, and this time her expression was calculating. "What's your name?" "Marcus Williams." "Marcus Williams," she repeated, as if testing how it sounded. "What do you do for work, Marcus Williams?" It was an odd question to ask someone who'd just saved your life, but Marcus answered honestly. "I'm between jobs at the moment. Actually, I was planning to stop by Titan Enterprises after this to follow up on a security position I applied for." Something changed in her face. Surprise, maybe? Or irony? "Titan Enterprises," she said slowly. "Yeah. Long shot, probably, but I need the work." Marcus shrugged. "Single dad. Bills don't pay themselves." Before she could respond, the first police officers burst through the damaged front door, weapons drawn and voices commanding everyone to show their hands. Marcus immediately complied, dropping into the standard position he'd taught to countless soldiers over the years. As he lay face down on the cold marble floor, listening to the woman beside him calmly explaining to the officers that Marcus had saved her life and disarmed one of the attackers, he couldn't shake the feeling that this routine bank visit had just changed everything. He had no idea how right he was. The police station's fluorescent lights made everything look harsh and unforgiving. Marcus sat in a plastic chair that had seen better decades, giving his statement to Detective Rodriguez for the third time. His watch showed 4:47 p.m., which meant Zoe had been waiting in aftercare for over an hour. She'd be worried sick, probably convinced something terrible had happened to him just like it had to her mother. "So you just happen to have military-grade combat training?" Detective Rodriguez asked, his pen hovering over his notepad with obvious skepticism. "Special Forces. 8 years active duty," Marcus replied, trying to keep the frustration out of his voice. "I discharged 2 years ago when my wife got sick." "I've told you this already." "Right. And you decided to play hero because?" "Because armed men were shooting at innocent people." Marcus's patience was wearing thin. "Look, detective, I understand you have to ask these questions, but my 7-year-old daughter is waiting for me at school, and she's already lost one parent. Can we please wrap this up?" Rodriguez's expression softened slightly. He had kids too. Marcus could tell by the way his eyes changed when Marcus mentioned Zoe. "Just a few more questions, then you can go. The woman you saved, she specifically requested to speak with you before you leave. She doesn't need to thank me. I did what anyone would have done. Actually," Rodriguez said, closing his notepad, "I don't think anyone else in that bank could have done what you did. That was some serious professional-level stuff, Williams." 15 minutes later, Marcus was escorted to a small conference room where the businesswoman from the bank sat at a metal table, looking completely composed despite having been shot at less than 3 hours ago. She'd somehow managed to fix her hair and makeup, and her suit looked like she just stepped out of a boardroom rather than a crime scene. She stood when he entered, extending a perfectly manicured hand. "Mr. Williams, I don't believe we were properly introduced. I'm Elena Rivera." Marcus shook her hand, noting the firm grip and direct eye contact. "Marcus. And you really don't need to thank me, Ms. Rivera. I'm just glad everyone's okay. Please sit." She gestured to the chair across from her. "And I'm afraid thanking you is only part of why I wanted to speak with you." Something in her tone made Marcus pause. This wasn't going to be a simple conversation. Elena opened her recovered briefcase and pulled out a business card, sliding it across the table. Marcus looked down and felt his stomach drop. Elena Rivera, Chief Executive Officer, Titan Enterprises. "You've got to be kidding me," Marcus said, staring at the card. "You're the CEO of Titan Enterprises?" "I am. And you mentioned earlier that you applied for a security position with my company." Marcus ran a hand through his hair, suddenly feeling like the universe was playing an elaborate joke on him. "Yeah. Last week. I never heard back, so I figured it was a no. Our HR department processes hundreds of applications. Yours probably got lost in the shuffle." Elena leaned forward, her expression serious. "But after what happened today, I have some questions that I hope you can help me answer." "Such as?" "Such as how 3 armed men knew exactly when I would be at that specific bank branch, carrying those specific documents." Elena's voice was steady, but Marcus could hear the underlying tension. "I made that decision to stop at the bank exactly 47 minutes before it happened. I told no one where I was going." Marcus felt his old analytical instincts kicking in. "You think someone was tracking your movements?" "I think someone on the inside knew about my schedule." Elena opened her briefcase again and showed Marcus the documents that had scattered during the attack. "These are confidential merger agreements. My company is about to acquire a smaller firm for $12 billion. If our competitors got hold of these details before the announcement, they could make counteroffers, drive up the price, or tank the deal entirely," Marcus finished. Corporate espionage. Exactly. And today wasn't just a robbery, Mr. Williams. It was a targeted extraction operation. They knew my name, they knew what I'd be carrying, and they knew exactly where to find me. Marcus studied her face. Elena Rivera was clearly a woman used to being in control, used to having answers. The fact that someone had gotten this close to her, had literally shot at her, was shaking that control in ways she probably wasn't accustomed to. Have you told the police this? I've shared what I can without compromising ongoing business negotiations. But Detective Rodriguez is focused on the robbery itself, not the larger implications. Elena paused, seeming to weigh her next words carefully. I need someone who understands both security and discretion. Someone who can think like the people who are trying to hurt me. Marcus saw where this was heading. Ms. Rivera, I appreciate the confidence, but I'm not a private investigator. I'm just a guy looking for steady work so I can take care of my daughter. What if I offered you that steady work? The question hung in the air between them. Marcus thought about his dwindling savings account, the stack of bills on his kitchen table, and Zoe's upcoming school expenses. Then he thought about armed men shooting at this woman because of corporate documents. What exactly are you proposing? Temporary protection detail while I investigate who leaked my schedule. A few days, maybe a week. I'll pay you consultant rates, $500 a day, plus expenses. Marcus did quick math. $500 a day for a week would solve his immediate financial problems, and maybe even let him take Zoe somewhere nice for spring break. But it would also mean putting himself between Elena Rivera and whoever wanted her dead. I have a daughter, Marcus said slowly. She's 7 years old, and she's already lost her mother. I can't take risks that might leave her an orphan. I understand. And I wouldn't ask you to. Elena's expression softened. The protection detail would be during business hours only. Evenings and weekends you'd be with your daughter. And if things escalate beyond what you're comfortable with, you can walk away. No questions asked? Marcus looked at the business card again. CEO of Titan Enterprises. The same company where he'd applied for a basic security guard position was now offering him consultant-level pay to protect their top executive. Why me? He asked. You could hire professional bodyguards. Ex-Secret Service, former FBI agents. People with credentials and references. Because professional bodyguards didn't save my life today. You did. Elena leaned back in her chair. And because someone inside my organization is feeding information to people who want to hurt me. I need someone they don't know about, someone they can't predict or compromise. Marcus thought about Zoe waiting at school, probably telling herself stories about why Daddy was late, probably trying not to cry the way she did when she missed her mother. He thought about the job interviews that hadn't panned out, the savings account that got smaller every month, and the way Zoe tried to hide her disappointment when he had to say no to things other kids took for granted. Then he thought about the way those robbers had moved, the way they'd known Elena's name, and the cold professionalism of their operation. I'll need to pick up my daughter first, Marcus said finally. And she comes with me tomorrow if there's any chance of danger. Elena smiled, the first genuine smile he'd seen from her. Deal. But Mr. Williams? Yeah? Call me Elena. If someone's trying to kill me, we're probably going to get to know each other pretty well. As Marcus stood to leave, Elena added one more thing that made his blood run cold. Oh, and Marcus? Those men today? They weren't amateurs trying to get lucky. They were professionals who made one mistake. They didn't expect you to be there. Next time, they'll be ready for interference. Walking out of the police station, Marcus realized he'd just agreed to step into the middle of a corporate war zone. And somewhere out there, the people who tried to kill Elena Rivera were already planning their next move. The next morning, Marcus stood outside the gleaming 40-story Titan Enterprises building with Zoe's small hand gripping his tightly. At 7:45 a.m., downtown was already buzzing with coffee-clutching professionals hurrying to their offices. But Marcus felt completely out of place in his best khakis and a button-down shirt that had seen better years. Daddy, why are we going to your work if you don't work here yet? Zoe asked, her backpack bouncing as she tried to keep up with his longer strides. It's complicated, sweetheart, Marcus replied, scanning the crowds automatically for anything that seemed out of place. Remember what we talked about. You're going to sit quietly while Daddy has some important meetings, and then we'll get ice cream for lunch. Can I have 2 scoops? We'll see. Marcus squeezed her hand gently. The truth was, after yesterday's events and Elena's warning about professional killers, he would have given Zoe anything she asked for. The thought of leaving her alone, even at school, made his chest tight with anxiety. The lobby of Titan Enterprises looked like something out of a magazine: marble floors, floor-to-ceiling windows, and a reception desk that probably cost more than Marcus's car. The security guard, a bored-looking man in his 50s, barely glanced up from his newspaper. "We're here to see Elena Rivera," Marcus said, approaching the desk. "Do you have an appointment?" the guard asked, not bothering to look up. "She's expecting us." "Name?" "Marcus Williams." That got the guard's attention. He looked up, took in Marcus's appearance and the 7-year-old girl beside him, and his expression shifted from bored to suspicious. "Let me call upstairs," the guard said, reaching for his phone. Before he could dial, the elevator doors opened and Elena Rivera stepped out, looking like she'd walked off the cover of Fortune magazine. Her navy blue suit was perfectly tailored, her hair was immaculate, and she carried herself with the kind of confidence that came from running a billion-dollar company. "Marcus," she said, walking over with a smile that seemed genuine. "Right on time." Then she looked down at Zoe, and her expression softened in a way that surprised Marcus. "And you must be the famous daughter I've heard so much about." Zoe, who was normally shy around strangers, looked up at Elena with wide eyes. "Are you a princess?" Elena laughed, actually laughed, and knelt down to Zoe's level. "Not quite, sweetie. I'm more like the queen of a very boring castle full of computers and meetings." "That sounds important," Zoe said solemnly. "It is. And your daddy is going to help me with some very important work." Elena stood and looked at Marcus. "There's a daycare facility on the 15th floor for employees' children. Zoe can stay there while we work." Marcus felt his shoulders relax slightly. "You're sure that's okay?" "More than okay. Corporate daycare is one of our best benefits. She'll be safe there." 20 minutes later, after Zoe had been settled with the daycare staff and promised she'd be picked up for their ice cream lunch, Marcus found himself sitting in Elena's corner office. The view of the city was spectacular, but Marcus was more interested in the security cameras he could spot and the fact that Elena's desk was positioned so she could see both the door and the windows. "You've done this before," Marcus observed. "Done what?" "Worried about people trying to hurt you. Your office setup, the way you position yourself, this isn't new." Elena poured herself coffee from an expensive-looking machine and offered Marcus a cup. 3 years ago, Titan acquired a smaller firm that was developing military-grade encryption software. The previous owner wasn't happy about the acquisition and made some threats. I learned to be careful. What happened to him? Prison. Wire fraud, tax evasion. Turns out threatening CEOs was the least of his crimes. Elena sat across from Marcus, her expression serious. But this feels different. Yesterday was professional, coordinated. Someone with real resources wants those merger documents. Marcus accepted the coffee, noting that it was better than anything he'd ever tasted. "Tell me about the merger. Who else knows the details?" "My executive team, 5 people total. My personal assistant. The legal team handling the contracts. And the target company's leadership, obviously. That's at least 15 people with access to sensitive information. 16 if you count me." Elena opened a folder on her desk. "I've been going through personnel files all night, looking for anything that might indicate a leak. Financial troubles, recent lifestyle changes, anything that might make someone vulnerable to bribes or blackmail." Marcus looked at the files she'd spread across the desk. "Find anything interesting?" "Maybe. My chief financial officer, David Chin, recently bought a house that's probably worth twice his annual salary. Claims it's family money, but the timing is suspicious." "Anyone else?" "My head of legal, Patricia Wells, has been acting strange for the past month. Jumpy, paranoid, asking odd questions about corporate security protocols. Marcus studied Elena's face. You trust these people? I thought I did. David's been with the company for 8 years. Patricia even longer. Elena's voice carried a note of betrayal that she was trying to hide. The worst part is that whoever's doing this has been in my inner circle, sitting in meetings, pretending to care about the company's success while planning to destroy it. Or planning to destroy you specifically. Marcus pointed out. Those men yesterday weren't just after documents. They used your name. This feels personal. Elena was quiet for a moment, staring out the window at the city below. There's something else I haven't told you. What? The merger we're pursuing. It's not just about money. The company we're acquiring, TechFlow Solutions, has developed software that could revolutionize cybersecurity for financial institutions. Banks, investment firms, government agencies, everyone wants this technology. Marcus felt the situation getting more complicated by the minute. So we're not just talking about corporate espionage. We're talking about national security implications. Exactly. And if our competitors get hold of this technology instead of us, they could control digital security for major financial systems. Marcus set down his coffee cup. Elena, this is way bigger than what you described yesterday. You're not just dealing with business rivals, you could be dealing with foreign agents, organized crime, or worse. I know. Elena's voice was quiet. That's why I need someone I can trust. Someone who's not part of the system that's already been compromised. Marcus looked around the luxurious office, thought about Zoe playing happily in the daycare downstairs, and tried to calculate the risk he was taking. On one hand, Elena was right, she needed help, and he had skills that could make a difference. On the other hand, he was a single father whose primary responsibility was keeping his daughter safe. I'll help you, Marcus said finally. But we do this my way. No unnecessary risks, no cowboy heroics. We investigate quietly, gather evidence, and turn everything over to the appropriate authorities. Agreed. And if things get too dangerous, I'm out. No arguments, no guilt trips. Zoe comes first. Elena nodded. I wouldn't expect anything else. But Marcus? Yeah? I have a feeling that whoever's after me won't give us the luxury of playing it safe. Yesterday was just the opening move. As if summoned by her words, Elena's phone buzzed with a text message. She glanced at it, and her face went pale. What is it? Marcus asked. Elena turned the phone so he could see the message from an unknown number. Ms. Rivera, yesterday was a warning. Stop the merger or next time we won't miss. You have 48 hours. Marcus stood up, his military training automatically shifting him into threat assessment mode. We need to get you out of this office. Now. But my meetings can wait. Elena, whoever sent this isn't playing games anymore. Marcus was already moving toward the door. We need to assume they know your schedule, your location, everything. From now on, we don't go anywhere they might expect you to be. As they hurried toward the elevator to collect Zoe, Marcus realized their unlikely alliance was about to be tested in ways neither of them had anticipated. The safe house Elena had arranged was a modest 2-bedroom apartment in a nondescript building 15 miles from downtown. It wasn't the luxury Elena was accustomed to, but Marcus approved of the location, multiple exit routes, clear sight lines, and neighbors who minded their own business. Zoe was napping on the couch, exhausted from the morning's excitement and the promised ice cream lunch that had turned into takeout pizza in a strange apartment. Marcus watched her sleep, her small face peaceful in a way that made his chest ache. This wasn't the stable life he'd wanted to give her after losing Sarah. She's beautiful, Elena said softly, sitting down at the kitchen table with her laptop and a stack of files. She has your eyes. She has her mother's everything else, thank God. Marcus replied, pulling the blinds closed and checking the locks on the door for the 3rd time. Elena, we need to talk about what we're really dealing with here. I've been thinking the same thing. Elena opened her laptop and turned it toward Marcus. I've been going through security footage from yesterday, and I found something interesting. On the screen was grainy black and white footage from a camera across the street from the bank. Marcus could see the three robbers approaching the building, but Elena had frozen the frame on something else, a black sedan parked half a block away. "Notice anything?" Elena asked. Marcus studied the image. The sedan. Someone was watching, probably coordinating the whole thing. Exactly. But look at the timestamp. Marcus looked closer. The sedan had arrived 23 minutes before Elena even decided to go to the bank. "They weren't just tracking your movements," Marcus said slowly. "They were ahead of you. They knew you'd be there before you knew you'd be there." Elena nodded grimly. "Which means whoever's feeding them information has access to more than just my calendar. They know how I think, how I make decisions." Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the apartment's air conditioning. "Elena, that level of access, that's not just someone in your company. That's someone close to you. Someone who understands your patterns, your habits. I've been thinking about that too." Elena pulled up another file on her laptop. "I ran a correlation analysis of everyone who had access to sensitive information and who also knew my personal routines well enough to predict my decisions." She showed Marcus a chart with 5 names, each with detailed background information. David Chen, my CFO. Patricia Wells, head of legal. Michael Torres, VP of operations. Sandra Kim, my personal assistant. And James Morrison, head of security. Marcus studied the list. "Your head of security is a suspect?" "He'd have access to everything: building layouts, my schedule, security protocols. If someone wanted inside information, he'd be the perfect source. Or the perfect fall guy." Marcus leaned back in his chair, his mind working through the possibilities. "Tell me about yesterday morning. Before you decided to go to the bank, who did you interact with?" Elena closed her eyes, clearly trying to reconstruct the timeline. "I had coffee with Sandra at 7:30. We reviewed my schedule for the day. Then a conference call with David and Patricia about the merger at 8:15. What about Morrison? I saw him in the elevator around 9. He asked if I needed extra security for the TechFlow meeting this afternoon, the one that's obviously not happening now." Marcus felt something click into place. "Elena, what time did you decide to stop at the bank?" "Around 1:45. I was leaving for lunch when I remembered I needed to deposit the merger down payment check. And the attack happened at 2:23. Less than 40 minutes later." Marcus stood up and began pacing, his mind racing. Someone would have had to mobilize a 3-man team, get them to the bank, and position surveillance, all in under 40 minutes. "Unless they were already in position," Elena said quietly. "Exactly. Which means they didn't know when you'd be there, but they knew you would be there. Eventually." Elena stared at him. "How is that possible?" Marcus thought back to his military intelligence training. "Because someone who knows you well enough knew that sooner or later you'd need to make that deposit. They just had to wait. But that could take days, weeks even. Not if they created a situation that would force your hand." Marcus stopped pacing. "Elena, why did you decide to deposit the check yesterday instead of today or tomorrow?" "Because," Elena paused, thinking. "Because Sandra reminded me that the bank closes early on Wednesdays for some kind of staff training. If I didn't deposit it yesterday, it would have to wait until Thursday, and the merger deadline is Friday." Marcus felt the pieces falling into place. "And who told Sandra about the bank's early closing?" Elena's face went pale. I don't know. I assumed she just knew. Call her. Right now." Elena dialed Sandra's number and put the phone on speaker. After 3 rings, Sandra's cheerful voice filled the apartment. "Elena! Are you okay? I heard about what happened at the bank. Where are you?" "I'm safe, Sandra. Listen, I have a quick question. Yesterday morning when you reminded me about the bank closing early, how did you know about that?" There was a pause. James Morrison mentioned it when I was updating security protocols on Monday. He said something about local businesses having schedule changes that might affect your routine." Marcus and Elena exchanged glances. Morrison again. "Sandra, this is important. Elena continued. Did Morrison ask you to remind me about the bank closing? Another pause, longer this time. Not exactly. He mentioned it in passing, and when I saw the merger check on your desk yesterday morning, I thought you should know. Okay, thank you. Sandra, I need you to do something for me. Don't tell anyone where I am or what we've discussed. Not even other executives. Of course. Elena, are you in danger? I'm being careful. I'll call you later. After Elena hung up, Marcus sat back down, his expression grim. Sandra's not the leak. She's being manipulated. By Morrison. It fits. He has access to everything, he knows your routines, and he's in the perfect position to coordinate with outside threats while maintaining plausible deniability. Elena was quiet for a moment, staring out the window. James has been with the company for 6 years. I trusted him with my life, literally. He's coordinated my security for dozens of high-profile events. Which means he knows exactly how to circumvent that security when he needs to. Marcus checked his watch. Elena, we need proof before we make any accusations. A head of security gone rogue could destroy your company's reputation even if we're wrong. And if we're right? Then he's probably planning his next move right now. Marcus looked over at Zoe, still sleeping peacefully on the couch. Elena, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. What? Is there anyone at all, who you trust completely? Someone who couldn't possibly be involved in this? Elena thought for a long moment. My brother Luis. He's a federal prosecutor in Chicago, no connection to the business world. And my assistant before Sandra, Maria Gonzalez. She retired last year, but she knew me better than anyone. Can you reach out to Maria without going through normal channels? I have her personal cell phone number. Marcus nodded. Good. We're going to need someone on the inside who Morrison doesn't know about. Someone who can help us gather evidence without tipping him off. As if the universe was listening to their conversation, Elena's phone buzzed with another text message. This one made Marcus's blood run cold. Stop running, Ms. Rivera. We know about the safe house. 36 hours remaining. Marcus was already moving, gently shaking Zoe awake. We're leaving. Now. But how did they? Elena started. Questions later. Moving now. Marcus scooped up Zoe, who murmured sleepily against his shoulder. Elena, grab only what you absolutely need. We have maybe 10 minutes before this place is compromised. As they rushed out of the apartment, Marcus realized that James Morrison wasn't just feeding information to the enemy. He was staying one step ahead of them, anticipating their moves with the precision of someone who knew exactly how they thought. The hunter had become the hunted, and their pursuer knew them better than they knew themselves. The motel on the outskirts of the city was the kind of place that asked no questions and accepted cash payments. Marcus had paid for 3 nights under a false name while Elena waited in the car with a sleeping Zoe. It wasn't the Ritz, but the parking lot had good visibility and multiple exit routes, exactly what they needed. I can't believe I'm hiding in a place like this, Elena muttered as Marcus carried Zoe into the cramped room that smelled faintly of disinfectant and old cigarettes. Your billion-dollar company isn't going to help you if you're dead, Marcus replied, settling Zoe on one of the twin beds and covering her with a thin blanket. Besides, Morrison won't think to look for the CEO of Titan Enterprises in a $40 a night motel. Elena sat heavily in the room's single chair, looking more defeated than Marcus had seen her. The events of the past 2 days were clearly wearing on her, stripping away the polished confidence that had made her seem untouchable. Marcus, what if we're wrong about James? What if it's someone else entirely? Then we'll figure it out. But right now, Morrison fits the profile perfectly. Marcus checked the locks on the door and pulled the curtains tight. Elena, I need you to think. Has Morrison done anything else recently that seemed unusual? He's been pushing for upgraded security systems. New cameras, enhanced access controls, updated background checks for all employees. Elena paused. Actually, he presented the proposal the day after I announced the TechFlow merger to the board. Marcus felt another piece click into place. He wanted better surveillance capabilities right after learning about the merger. That's not coincidence. But why would he want to stop the merger? His job's security doesn't depend on it. Maybe his job's security depends on stopping it. Marcus pulled out his phone and did a quick internet search. Elena, what do you know about Morrison's background before he came to Titan? Military intelligence, I think. Honorable discharge, exemplary service record. Marcus showed her his phone screen. James Morrison, former Army intelligence. But look at this. He was investigated for selling classified information to defense contractors in 2018. Charges were dropped due to insufficient evidence. Elena's face went pale. He never mentioned any investigation. Would you hire someone who'd been suspected of espionage? Marcus set his phone aside. Elena, Morrison isn't just stealing information for money. He's a professional. This is what he does. Before Elena could respond, her phone rang. She looked at the caller ID and frowned. It's David Chen. My CFO, she answered on speaker. David, what's going on? Elena, thank God. Where are you? Morrison's been looking for you everywhere. He says there's been another threat. Marcus shook his head frantically, but Elena was already responding. What kind of threat? He won't give details over the phone, but he says it's urgent. He wants to meet with you in person to coordinate enhanced security measures. Where does he want to meet? Your house. He says it's the most secure location, and he can sweep it for surveillance devices before you arrive. Marcus grabbed the phone from Elena. David, this is Marcus Williams. I'm working security for Elena. We're not meeting at her house. Who is this guy? David's voice was suspicious. Elena, Morrison says you're with some unvetted contractor who might be compromising your safety. Elena took the phone back. David, Marcus saved my life. I trust him completely. But Morrison's our head of security. He's trained for this kind of situation. Tell Morrison we'll meet him tomorrow at the office. During business hours. With other people around. Elena, he says that's not secure enough. The threat is immediate. Marcus was already pulling Elena toward the door, Zoe stirring in his arms as he lifted her. We're leaving. Now. David, I have to go, Elena said, hanging up the phone. As they hurried toward the car, Marcus explained quickly. Morrison's using David to flush us out. He knows we suspect him, so he's creating urgency to force a meeting on his terms. But what if there really is another threat? Elena, Morrison is the threat. They were halfway to the car when Marcus heard it, the distinctive whine of a high-performance engine approaching fast. He looked up to see a black SUV turning into the motel parking lot, its headlights cutting through the evening darkness. Get in the car, Marcus said, his voice deadly calm. Now. Elena fumbled with the keys while Marcus strapped a sleepy Zoe into the back seat. The SUV was moving slowly through the parking lot, clearly searching. They found us again. Elena whispered, her hands shaking as she started the engine. Drive. Calmly. Don't attract attention. Elena pulled out of the parking space just as the SUV turned down their row. In the rearview mirror, Marcus could see the vehicle speed up, its intentions clear. Floor it, Marcus said. Elena pressed the accelerator, and their sedan shot forward, tires squealing as they raced toward the street. Behind them, the SUV gave chase, its powerful engine easily keeping pace. There! Marcus pointed to a construction zone ahead where the road narrowed to one lane. Get through there before they can follow. Elena swerved around orange cones and concrete barriers, their car scraping against a metal guardrail as they squeezed through the narrow gap. The SUV tried to follow but was too wide, slamming into a concrete barrier with a grinding crash of metal and glass. Is Zoe okay? Elena asked, her voice tight with panic. Marcus checked the back seat. His daughter was awake now, eyes wide but not crying. She'd learned early in life that sometimes Daddy had to handle scary situations, and crying didn't help. I'm okay, Daddy, Zoe said in a small voice. Are the bad guys gone? For now, sweetheart. Marcus looked back at the crashed SUV, noting that the occupants were already climbing out, uninjured but stranded. Elena, we can't keep running like this. They're always one step ahead. But how? How do they keep finding us? Marcus pulled out Elena's phone and showed her the screen. Because Morrison isn't just tracking your movements. He's tracking your phone, your credit cards, probably your car's GPS system. He has access to every electronic footprint you leave. Elena stared at the phone in horror. So what do? We go dark. Completely off the grid. Marcus rolled down the window and tossed Elena's phone onto the highway, where it shattered under the wheels of a passing truck. No phones, no credit cards, no electronic trail of any kind. But how will we communicate? How will we get information? The old-fashioned way. Cash, payphones, and people Morrison doesn't know about. Marcus thought about the crashed SUV and the professional precision of their pursuers. Elena, this isn't just about stopping the merger anymore. Morrison's not working alone. This is bigger than corporate espionage. What do you mean? I mean the people chasing us just tried to ram our car with a child inside. They're not trying to scare you anymore. They're trying to eliminate you. Elena was quiet for a long moment, processing the reality of their situation. So what's our next move? Marcus looked at his daughter in the back seat, her small face illuminated by passing streetlights. Zoe was counting the yellow lines on the road, a coping mechanism she'd developed after her mother died, focusing on something she could control when everything else felt chaotic. Our next move is to stop being the hunted, Marcus said. It's time to become the hunters. As they drove deeper into the night, Marcus began formulating a plan that would either expose Morrison's conspiracy or get them all killed trying. But one thing was clear, they couldn't keep running forever. The next 24 hours would determine whether Elena Rivera lived to see her merger completed, or whether James Morrison's betrayal would destroy everything she'd built. The stakes had just become life and death. The abandoned warehouse on the industrial side of town had been empty for 3 years, ever since the textile company that owned it moved operations overseas. Marcus had scouted it during his job search months ago, when he briefly considered private security work. Old habits from his military days made him catalog potential safe houses wherever he went. Now, as dawn light filtered through broken windows, it served as their temporary command center. Elena sat on an old wooden crate, watching Marcus systematically check the building's entrances and sight lines with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd done this 1,000 times before. Zoe was curled up in a corner, wrapped in Marcus's jacket and sleeping fitfully on a pile of clean canvas drop cloths he'd found. You're not just ex-military, are you? Elena said quietly. This isn't regular army training. Marcus paused in his security sweep. What makes you say that? The way you think. The way you move. Yesterday you identified a professional surveillance team, tracked electronic signals, and executed a tactical escape from a vehicle pursuit. Elena stood up, studying his face. Regular soldiers don't learn those skills. Marcus finished checking the last window before responding. Special operations. Delta Force, technically, but we worked closely with CIA and NSA on intelligence gathering missions. Intelligence gathering, Elena repeated. You were a spy. Among other things. Marcus sat down on a crate across from her, suddenly looking older than his 34 years. Counterterrorism, mostly. Hunting down people who sold weapons to terrorist groups, or who leaked classified information that got American soldiers killed. Elena felt a chill of recognition. People like Morrison. Exactly like Morrison. Marcus's voice carried a weight that hadn't been there before. I spent 8 years tracking down betrayers, Elena. People who sold out their own teams, their own countries, for money or ideology or just because they could. Morrison fits the profile perfectly. Is that why you left? Because you got tired of chasing traitors? Marcus looked over at Zoe, his expression softening. I left because Sarah got sick. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer, diagnosed on a Tuesday, gone by Christmas. The army offered me compassionate leave, but Sarah needed more than weekends and holidays. Elena felt her chest tighten. She'd lost people too, her parents in a car accident when she was 25, but she couldn't imagine watching someone waste away while trying to balance a demanding career. So you gave up everything to take care of her? I gave up a job to take care of my family. Marcus's voice was matter-of-fact, but Elena could hear the pain underneath. Sarah lasted 18 months. Longest 18 months of my life, and also the shortest. Every day was precious and terrible at the same time. And Zoe? Zoe was 6 when Sarah died. Old enough to understand that Mommy wasn't coming back, too young to understand why. Marcus rubbed his face with both hands. For the first year after Sarah passed, Zoe barely spoke. She'd just sit in her room, drawing pictures of the three of us together. I took her to counselors, tried play therapy, bought every book on childhood grief I could find. What helped? Time. And routine. And me figuring out how to be both parents instead of trying to replace the one she lost. Marcus looked at Elena directly. That's why I can't let anything happen to me, Elena. Zoe's already lost one parent. If she loses me too. Elena understood now why Marcus had been so reluctant to get involved, why he kept checking on Zoe, why he'd thrown away her phone without hesitation when it might compromise their safety. His daughter wasn't just his responsibility, she was his entire world. You could have told me, Elena said, about your background, your training. It would have made me feel safer knowing you had that kind of experience. Would it? Marcus stood up and walked to one of the broken windows, looking out at the empty industrial landscape. Elena, in my 8 years with Special Ops, I lost 14 teammates to betrayal. 14 good soldiers died because someone they trusted decided money was more important than loyalty. Morrison's not the first traitor you've dealt with. Not even close. But he might be the most dangerous. Marcus turned back to face her. The others were usually desperate, gambling debts, blackmail, family members being threatened. They made mistakes because they were scared or stupid or both. But Morrison's different. Morrison's a professional. This isn't his first job, and he's not doing it out of desperation. He's doing it because he's good at it. Marcus's voice carried the certainty of experience. People like him don't make emotional decisions. They plan everything 3 moves ahead, they have contingencies for their contingencies, and they don't leave loose ends. Elena felt a chill. Loose ends like us. Exactly. Which means we can't just expose him and hope justice prevails. He'll be gone before we can prove anything, and he'll leave behind a trail of bodies to cover his tracks. So what do we do? Marcus was quiet for a moment, and Elena could see him wrestling with something internal. There's a reason I left intelligence work, Elena. And it wasn't just Sarah's illness. What do you mean? My last mission, the one right before Sarah got diagnosed, we were hunting an arms dealer who'd been selling American weapons to Taliban fighters. 3 months of investigation, surveillance, building a case. When we finally moved to arrest him, we discovered he'd been feeding information to insurgents for over 2 years. 27 American soldiers died because of intel he provided. Elena waited, sensing there was more. We found him in a compound in Afghanistan. He was surrounded by evidence of his betrayal, bank records, communication logs, photos of American bases he'd passed along. Marcus's voice became quieter. Standard protocol was to arrest him, bring him back for trial, let the justice system handle it. But you didn't follow protocol. I followed a higher protocol. The protocol that says when someone gets your teammates killed, you make sure they never get the chance to do it again. Marcus met her eyes. I'm not proud of what I did, Elena. But I'm not sorry either. Elena understood what he was telling her. Marcus hadn't just been a soldier. He'd been judge, jury, and executioner when the situation demanded it. You're worried you might have to make that choice again. With Morrison. I'm worried that Morrison won't give us any other choice. Marcus looked over at Zoe again. And I'm worried about what kind of man my daughter's father becomes if I have to go down that road again. Before Elena could respond, Zoe stirred in her makeshift bed, blinking sleepily in the morning light. Daddy? She called softly. I'm here, sweetheart, Marcus said, immediately crossing to kneel beside her. How did you sleep? I dreamed about Mommy again, Zoe said, sitting up and rubbing her eyes. She said to tell you that she's proud of you for taking care of people. Marcus's face softened in a way that made Elena's heart ache. Did she say anything else? She said the bad guys can't win if good people don't give up. Zoe looked at Elena with serious 7-year-old eyes. Are you giving up, Miss Elena? Elena knelt down beside Marcus, meeting Zoe's gaze. No, sweetheart. Your daddy and I are going to make sure the bad guys don't win. Good, Zoe said matter-of-factly. Daddy's really brave. He'll protect you. As Marcus helped Zoe get ready for another day on the run, Elena realized she'd learned something crucial about her protector. Marcus Williams was more than just skilled. He was a man who'd already sacrificed everything once for the people he loved. The question was whether he'd have to sacrifice his soul to keep them alive. The public library's computer terminal felt like a relic from another era, but it was exactly what Marcus needed: anonymous internet access that couldn't be traced back to them. While Zoe colored quietly at a nearby table, Marcus and Elena hunched over the flickering monitor, following financial trails that would have been invisible to anyone without intelligence training. There, Marcus said, pointing at a series of banking transactions on the screen. James Morrison. 3 deposits in the past 6 months, each one exactly 48 hours after you announced major company developments. Elena leaned closer, studying the amounts. $50,000, $75,000, and $100,000. All from shell companies registered in the Cayman Islands. Classic money laundering setup. But that's not the smoking gun. Marcus opened another window, showing a different set of records. Look at this. Morrison's been accessing your personal calendar system from his home computer. Not just your work schedule, but your personal appointments, your banking routines, even your grocery shopping patterns. Elena felt sick. He's been stalking me electronically for months. It's worse than that. Marcus pulled up more files, his expression grim. He's been building a psychological profile. Every decision you make, every routine you follow, every preference you have, he's been cataloging all of it to predict your behavior. But why such an elaborate setup? If he just wanted information about the merger, there are easier ways. Marcus was quiet for a moment, thinking. Because this isn't just about the merger. Elena, I think Morrison's been planning to eliminate you from the beginning. What do you mean? Think about it. If he just wanted to steal merger documents, he could have done it quietly and disappeared. But instead, he's been systematically mapping your life, setting up elaborate traps, even hiring professional killers. Marcus turned to face her. He's not trying to rob you. He's trying to replace you. Elena felt the blood drain from her face. Replace me how? By making your death look accidental or like the result of corporate espionage gone wrong. Then, in the chaos that follows, someone positioned as your trusted security chief could step in to help stabilize the company. You think he's working with someone inside Titan? I think he is someone inside Titan. Someone who stands to benefit if you're gone and the company's leadership is in turmoil. Marcus opened one more file, and Elena gasped. It was a detailed organizational chart of Titan Enterprises, showing every executive position and line of succession. Someone had drawn red X marks through several names, including Elena's, and had written notes about restructuring opportunities and leadership transitions. Where did you find this? Morrison's personal cloud storage. He thought he was being clever, but he made the same mistake most criminals make: he kept records. Elena studied the chart more closely. These other names with X marks: David Chin, Patricia Wells, Michael Torres. He's planning to eliminate my entire executive team. Not eliminate. Replace. Look at the notes in the margins. Elena read the handwritten annotations and felt her stomach drop. Each marked name had a corresponding note about suitable replacements and cooperative successors. He's planning a corporate coup, she whispered. With backing from someone who wants to control Titan Enterprises. Marcus pointed to a series of communication logs. Look at these encrypted messages. Someone's been giving Morrison detailed instructions, paying him, coordinating the whole operation. Can we trace them? Already did. Marcus's smile was cold and professional. The messages are routing through several proxy servers, but the payment trail leads back to a very interesting source. He opened one final window, showing corporate registration documents for a company called Meridian Holdings. Elena's face went white. That's Richard Blackwood's investment firm. Who's Richard Blackwood? My former business partner. We started Titan together 15 years ago, but I bought him out in 2018 after we had a falling out about the company's direction. Elena's voice was bitter. He wanted to focus on defense contracts and government surveillance systems. I wanted to stay in civilian cybersecurity. Let me guess, he didn't take the buyout well. He threatened to destroy me. Said I'd stolen his vision, his company, his future. But that was 7 years ago. I thought he'd moved on. Marcus pulled up more records. He did move on. He's been planning this for 7 years, Elena. Meridian Holdings has been quietly acquiring shares in your competitors, building relationships with defense contractors, positioning himself to take over your market share. But how does Morrison fit in? Morrison was Blackwood's inside man from the beginning. Look at this. Marcus showed her Morrison's employment history. Before he came to Titan, Morrison worked security for 3 different companies. All 3 were eventually acquired by Meridian Holdings within 2 years of Morrison joining their teams. Elena felt the pieces clicking into place with horrible clarity. He's done this before. He infiltrates companies, destabilizes them from within, then Blackwood swoops in to acquire them. Exactly. But Titan was too big for a simple acquisition. So they decided to eliminate the leadership and create chaos, then position themselves as the solution. Elena stood up from the computer terminal, her face flushed with anger. That bastard. Richard always was too arrogant to build his own success. He had to steal mine. Elena, Marcus said quietly. There's something else. According to these files, the timeline for their plan has been accelerated. The TechFlow merger isn't just an opportunity for them, it's a deadline. What do you mean? If you complete the merger, Titan becomes too valuable and too well protected for Blackwood to take over. The TechFlow's cybersecurity technology would make corporate espionage nearly impossible. Marcus's expression was serious. They have to eliminate you before Friday, or they lose their window forever. Elena sank into a chair, the weight of the betrayal hitting her fully. James Morrison has been in my inner circle for 6 years. He's coordinated security for my home, my office, my travel. He knows every vulnerability, every weakness. Which is why we can't just call the police and hope for the best. Marcus said. Morrison's had years to prepare for exposure. He'll have escape routes, contingency plans, maybe even evidence planted to make you look like the guilty party. So what do we do? Marcus looked over at Zoe, who was still coloring peacefully, unaware of the adult conversation happening nearby. We do what I should have done from the beginning. We stop playing defense and start playing offense. Meaning? Meaning we use Morrison's own surveillance network against him. We make him think he's winning while we gather evidence that even he can't deny or destroy. Marcus's voice carried the cold certainty of his military training. But Elena, once we do this, there's no going back. Morrison and Blackwood will know we're onto them, and they'll escalate to lethal force. Elena thought about her company, her employees, the merger that could revolutionize cybersecurity for millions of people. Then she thought about 7 years of Richard Blackwood planning her destruction, using her trust in Morrison to orchestrate her downfall. James Morrison picked the wrong company to betray, Elena said, her voice hard with resolve. And Richard Blackwood picked the wrong woman to underestimate. Marcus nodded approvingly. Then let's show them what happens when they underestimate both of us. As they gathered their things and prepared to leave the library, Marcus felt the familiar weight of an impending confrontation. But this time, it wasn't just about completing a mission. It was about protecting the woman who'd given him a chance and the daughter who gave his life meaning. The final phase of their war with Morrison and Blackwood was about to begin. The boardroom of Titan Enterprises had never felt more like a battlefield. Marcus positioned himself near the windows, his trained eyes constantly scanning for threats, while Elena sat at the head of the polished conference table with federal agents flanking her on both sides. The evidence they'd gathered over the past week was spread across the table like pieces of a carefully constructed puzzle. It had taken 3 days of careful planning to set the trap. Marcus had used his intelligence training to feed Morrison false information through Elena's assistant Sandra, making the corrupt security chief believe they were hiding in a downtown hotel. While Morrison coordinated another attack team, FBI agents had been watching, recording, gathering the final pieces of evidence they needed for an airtight case. Agent Sarah Mitchell from the FBI's Corporate Crime Division looked up from Morrison's financial records. Ms. Rivera, this is one of the most comprehensive cases of corporate espionage we've seen in years. The documentation you and Mr. Williams compiled is extraordinary. The sting operation worked perfectly. Agent Mitchell continued. When Morrison tried to coordinate that attack on the hotel, we recorded everything: his communications with Blackwood, the hired contractors, even the financial transfers. He walked right into our trap. Thank you, Elena said, though her voice carried the exhaustion of someone who'd spent 7 days living like a fugitive in her own city. We just wanted to make sure there was no possibility of Morrison escaping justice this time. Through the conference room's glass walls, Marcus could see James Morrison being escorted through the main office in handcuffs, flanked by FBI agents. The man who'd once been entrusted with Elena's safety now looked like exactly what he was: a professional betrayer whose luck had finally run out. Morrison's eyes met Marcus's through the glass, and for a moment, the facade of the loyal security chief dropped completely. The look Morrison gave him was pure hatred, the fury of a predator who'd been outmaneuvered by prey he'd underestimated. Marcus simply nodded once, the gesture carrying a message that Morrison would understand: you should have stayed in your lane. Where's Zoe? Elena asked quietly, noticing Marcus's distraction. Safe. Your brother Luis picked her up from the hotel an hour ago. She's at a playground about 10 blocks away, probably telling him all about our adventure while eating ice cream for breakfast. Agent Mitchell smiled. Smart thinking, keeping her away from this. Though I have to ask, Mr. Williams, your background check shows some interesting gaps. 8 years Special Forces, then nothing for 2 years except unemployment filings? I was taking care of my dying wife and learning how to be a single parent, Marcus replied evenly. Not exactly resume material. And yet you managed to outmaneuver a professional intelligence operative and expose a multi-million-dollar corporate conspiracy. Elena leaned forward. Agent Mitchell, Marcus saved my life multiple times and handed you enough evidence to prosecute not just Morrison, but Richard Blackwood and his entire network. I think his background speaks for itself. Agent Mitchell nodded approvingly. Fair enough. Speaking of Blackwood, we executed search warrants on Meridian Holdings this morning. He's already in custody, and his cooperation is enthusiastic. Meaning he's talking to save his own skin, Marcus translated. Meaning he's giving us detailed information about Morrison's previous operations, the other companies they've targeted, and the defense contractors who were willing to pay for stolen cybersecurity technology. Agent Mitchell closed her file. This case is going to unravel a lot of corporate crime, Ms. Rivera. You should be proud. But Elena wasn't looking at the agent. She was watching Morrison being loaded into the back of a federal transport vehicle, her expression thoughtful. Elena? Marcus asked. You okay? I keep thinking about what you said, about people who betray their teams, their countries, for money. Elena stood up and walked to the window. James Morrison sat in my office for 6 years. He came to company parties, asked about my family, pretended to care about my safety. And the whole time, he was planning to destroy everything I built. Marcus joined her at the window. The hardest part about betrayal is that it requires trust first. Morrison was good at his job because he understood that. Do you think I'll be able to trust anyone again? After this? Marcus looked down at the street, where Zoe was probably laughing on a swing set, blissfully unaware that her father had just helped solve one of the most complex corporate conspiracies in recent history. You trusted me, Marcus said simply. A complete stranger who tackled you in a bank and claimed to be unemployed. You gave me a chance when no one else would. That was different. You saved my life. No, that was the same. Trust is always a risk, Elena. The question is whether the person is worth the risk. Agent Mitchell cleared her throat behind them. Ms. Rivera, there's one more matter we need to discuss. The TechFlow merger. Elena turned around. What about it? With Morrison and Blackwood's conspiracy exposed, there's no longer any external threat to the acquisition. The deadline is still Friday, that's tomorrow. Are you prepared to proceed? Elena looked at Marcus, then back at Agent Mitchell. Agent, as of this morning, I'm officially promoting Mr. Williams to head of corporate security for Titan Enterprises. The merger will proceed as scheduled, with proper security oversight. Marcus blinked. Elena, I never actually said yes to that job. You never said no either. Elena's smile was the first genuine one he'd seen from her in a week. Besides, you're overqualified for the basic security position you originally applied for. This promotion comes with a salary that will make sure Zoe never has to worry about school expenses or college tuition. And if I say no, then I'll respect your decision and find someone else. But Marcus, you've already proven you can protect what matters most to me. I can't think of anyone I'd rather have watching my back. Agent Mitchell gathered her files and stood to leave. Well, this has been one of the more satisfying cases I've worked. Mr. Williams, Ms. Rivera, thank you for your cooperation. We'll be in touch about the trial proceedings. After the FBI agents left, Marcus and Elena found themselves alone in the boardroom that had started this entire conspiracy. The silence felt different now, not the tense quiet of people hiding from killers, but the comfortable quiet of people who'd survived something together. You know, Elena said, when I walked into that bank Tuesday morning, I was just trying to deposit a check. And I was just trying to pick up my daughter on time, Marcus replied. Funny how life works. Wrong bank, wrong day, right? Marcus laughed, the first time Elena had heard him really laugh. Actually, I think it was exactly the right bank, exactly the right day. An hour later, Marcus stood outside Jefferson Elementary, watching Zoe run toward him with the boundless energy of a 7-year-old who'd spent the morning being spoiled by Uncle Luis. She crashed into his arms with the force of a small missile, chattering excitedly about playgrounds and ice cream and the nice FBI lady who'd given her a junior agent badge. Daddy, did you catch all the bad guys? We did, sweetheart. Good. Can we go home now? I miss my room. Marcus looked back at the Titan building, where Elena was probably already working on merger preparations and interviewing candidates for Morrison's replacement. Tomorrow, he'd return to work as head of corporate security, a job that would provide stability for Zoe and purpose for himself. Yeah, Zoe. We can go home. As they walked toward their car, Zoe skipping beside him and Elena's business card safely in his wallet, Marcus reflected on the strange twists of fate that had brought them here. 3 days ago, he'd been a desperate single father applying for security guard positions. Now he was the man who'd helped expose a multi-million-dollar conspiracy and earned the trust of one of the city's most powerful executives. But most importantly, he was still Zoe's father. And after everything they'd been through, silence, the quiet peace of a normal life, was indeed sweet. The adventure was over. Real life could begin again.